my freshman year, it was just this weird, like, not healthy coping mechanisms. Like one coping mechanism was food. If I was really stressed before a game, I would just eat a ton of food. And that caused me eating issues. And so it was just not healthy the way I coped. And like I said, it was sink or swim, and I was barely treading water. And then when I started going to therapy and I started learning about the growth mindset and what anxiety is and mindfulness, I was then able to actually properly control those emotions.
This episode is brought to you by West Coast Beach, a year-round beach volleyball club on the west side of Los Angeles in Santa Monica, California. At West Coast Beach, we aim to get 1% better every day, both on and off the court. You can find more info about us at westcoastvbc.com and on Instagram with handle @westcoastvbc. Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Within the Game podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Wexler, and this episode is with former USC Libero, YouTube content creator, social media influencer, TED Talker, and advocate for mental health, Victoria Garrick. Victoria is authentic, brave, and straight up real. She is very open about her battle with anxiety and depression, and it is part of her mission to help others with similar challenges. In this episode, we talk about the importance of mental health for athletes, why committing to being the best version of yourself is so key, how to win the battle of anxiety and depression, and how you can actually use those things to become stronger. This episode is great for anyone dealing with or knows anyone who is dealing with mental health issues. Victoria inspires me not only because of her accomplishments within the game, but because of the way that she uses her past experiences and influence to help others both within and outside of the game. I hope you enjoy this episode, and please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Thanks. I'm here with the amazing, inspiring Victoria Garrick. Victoria, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course. I am pumped to be here. Your energy and positivity is infectious as always. So this is brightening up my day.
Awesome. Vic, you were a 4-year Libero at USC and a starter as a freshman walk-on the number 1 ranked team in the nation, which is awesome. You're a Pac-12 champion, finishing your career with the top 5 most digs in program history. Amazing. You're a TED Talk speaker. Your TED Talk is awesome. We'll talk about that in a second. You have a TED Talk on mental health and body issues faced by student athletes. You're a creator and host of Realpod, a podcast which can be found on iTunes and Spotify on Wednesday mornings. And you're also a YouTube channel content creator, VictoriaGarrick.com. Instagram's @VictoriaGarrick. Victoria, welcome to the Tools Within. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I know I always laugh at the YouTube thing. It's such an alter ego. I never thought I would be a YouTuber, but I fully am with all this equipment. I looked at the other day, I would have never thought that I would do this, but here I am.
Here you are. We're going to jump right into it. Vic, what does living an inspired life mean to you?
I love it. Let's get real fast. Living an inspired life, to me, is something that is filled with purpose. I think if you're living an inspired life, you have an immense sense of purpose and what you're offering and contributing to the world. And, I hesitate to say that because I do know a lot of people struggle with purpose. What is my purpose on this huge planet? I'm one human being. I've been in a position where I didn't feel like I had purpose. And so to me, I feel like I live my most inspired life when I have purpose. And a lot of that is purpose in service of others and impacting the lives of others. And that's when I feel most fulfilled in an inspired life.
Love that. I love that. I want to move to practice. What does having an inspired practice mean to you?
Having an inspired practice to me means that you are in the pursuit of something. And when you say that, I jump to thinking about, volleyball practice, training as a volleyball player. And for me, it was in the pursuit of getting to a place I wanted to be or the player I wanted to be. And I think there's a huge difference in practicing just to practice or practicing with purpose and being inspired by that practice. And that's something I really pride myself on is, if I say I'm going to do something, I will do it. And the same for my workouts in my backyard in quarantine. If I tell myself we're going to plank for 2 minutes and I start the plank and at 110, I'm like, screw this. I'm like, no, you said it. And that holds me accountable. So to me, inspired practice is, in pursuit of something, whether that's becoming a better player or when I'm planking in the backyard, just proving to myself that I keep my word.
I love that. I love that. So this project is all about tools for the youth athlete. And I want you to put yourself back when you were practicing at USA. Let's say USC. Let's say you were having an uninspired practice. What were some tools to help you get back to an inspired practice in that moment?
I'm a big believer in the idea of being 100% happy and 100% inspired every single day of your life doesn't exist. Like,
Right.
I just don't think it exists. I mean, I see these people who are always happy, always inspired. I mean, the Dalai Lama is probably the exception, but even he has had to have had a bad day. And so for me, like, if I'm having an uninspired practice, I try not to get too hard on myself. Like, it's okay to not feel 100% the way you want to be that day. And so if I'm not having an inspired practice, I try to just dial it down into smaller things like, okay, well, how good of a teammate can I be to so-and-so because she clearly is the one getting picked on by coach? Or how fun can I make this practice for my teammates because everyone looks a little uninspired? So I think I dial it down to a more simple goal that's human-like, nothing to do with performance, just something to do with connection with people. And that's sort of how I will get back in that
I love
zone.
that. I love that. Let's carry that further to a game. What does an inspired game feel like to you?
An inspired game to me just feels like the most fun I have playing a sport. And that was something at the end of my career that really wavered and only came in small spurts was the fun
Mm,
of the game. And I remember even talking about this in therapy, like, when we played this team, I just felt good. I just wasn't thinking. I was calling the shots. I was covering. I was laughing with my teammates. I was playing well. Like, it was just fun. But
right.
then so many games, I'm thinking about it. I'm in my head about the score, my stats, how I'm playing, and my anxiety is on another level. So inspired play to me is fun play, and that's really when I feel my best.
So how does one carry over to the other? How does an inspired practice carry over to an inspired game?
I think that, hmm, well, for my inspired practice, I'm feeling like I am in a strong pursuit of something. And
Right.
then in a game, I'm feeling like I'm having fun. And so I would say that they tie together because that pursuit is of just being my best self and of being fully present. And so when I am on the right pursuit, not a conceited pursuit of statistics or awards, but on the right pursuit of becoming my best self, that ultimately converts to that really fun, energetic, memorable game.
I love that. I love that. So again, same kind of concept. Let's say you're in the middle of a game and you're not feeling inspired. What are some tools that you can implement in that moment to get you back to that inspired game feeling?
Well, let me ask a clarifying question. Am I uninspired? So I'm just like meh, and my energy's low, or am I like anxious and like
Good.
overwhelmed?
That's a good question. Maybe a little bit of both. I mean, I think all of us as athletes, when we're in that game, we can waver a little bit. Not all of us are like so inspired, so in the moment. And sometimes those negative thoughts do come in. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I would say both. What are some tips, some tools that you can use in the moment?
Yeah. So I guess for both, when I'm in like a meh place where I'm like, I don't really care about this. I don't want to be here. I mean, the most I experienced that was when I was dealing with mental health issues. I was really low and I just didn't really care. And I would notice like, why am I not excited to play Washington right now? Like we're USC and I'm just like, I'm so unenthused. And in those moments, I would try to um, connect with the people around me. So making eye contact, touching, hands, patting on the back, having conversations, and trying to connect with the present moment is something that helped me focus in when I didn't have focus and I didn't care to focus. And then conversely, when I was feeling anxious or overwhelmed for a game and that wasn't inspiring for me, I would really try, and this doesn't always work, but it's the right answer, to think about how well I could play when I was uncomfortable. So I walk into the gym, I'm not feeling great, I'm anxious, I'm worried, and my touch is off. Instead of freaking out and panicking, I would fight really hard to be like, okay, how good can you play tonight when we're already anxious and our warm up is trash? How good can we play? Because if we could play good after this, we're going to be pretty good next week when we feel good. So
Like
I would
that.
just try to take that, what's the opportunity approach.
That's really cool. What's the opportunity? I really love that. Well, that's a perfect segue to mindset. So let's get into mindset. Give us a little glimpse of your pregame mindset, and as well as during and post. What's going on in your mind?
I'm a very intuitive person. So I am high on how I'm feeling at all moments and how I react to those feelings. So, I'm an intuitive eater. Like I wake up, I don't know what I'm eating. I don't have a plan. I just think about what's going to feel best for me in a moment and I make a choice. And that's the same way I am before games. I can walk into the gym before the game and I can already feel how I am. If I am feeling like I'm in a great state, I've had an awesome day, I had a great pregame warm up, then I'm just listening to music, talking with teammates, and I'm just going with that flow. If I walk in, however, and I sense, yeah, I'm really unengaged or I'm really nervous, I would take different approaches, whether that would be taking my mind off of the game because of my anxiety. So whether it was watching a quick episode of The Office or listening to a podcast about something totally unrelated so that I could get my mind off of it and kind of calm down those thoughts, or if I needed to listen to pump up music and start dancing and get my energy up. So I would just I don't have a routine. And I know that that's not what I've heard a lot of the top athletes say, is that they all have routines, but a routine made me anxious.
Mm.
Having to do the same thing before every game caused me stress because if I didn't do something exactly the way I did when we won, I would be a nuthead. So I realized, I can't have a routine. I have to fully accept what I need as an athlete before this game.
Wow. So let's talk about the anxiety for a second, because a lot of us as athletes, especially youth athletes, have anxiety. It's one thing to feel anxious, but to have anxiety and to let that carry and let yourself go down that road, that can be tough. But you did something special about your anxiety. I believe it was after your second year at USC. You actually gave a TED talk on being a little bit anxious or having anxiety and maybe a little bit of depression. I was wondering if you could talk about a couple things. Number one, the content of that TED talk, but also where that thought came from, where you wanted to go express all that stuff, because it's very vulnerable to do that, especially right in the middle of it. Like a lot of times TED talks are later, like you talk about something that happened in the past, but you were a player, you were a current player, you know?
Yeah. And something I tell people too is like, after I gave that talk, like my junior year was still struggle bus. Like I was not coming back preaching like the answers. I feel like that talk was literally me at my lowest, like crying for help and saying, this is a thing. And how it started was just when I experienced my issues with mental health, which just for anyone who isn't familiar with my story, I dealt with performance anxiety my freshman year, just with all the pressure and the new lifestyle that I was dealing with. And then that performance anxiety went on for so long that it led to a depression and a depressive state, which was really low for me. And when I went through all of that, that was my freshman, sophomore year, I just was obviously struggling, but then a part of me was shocked. How do I feel so caught off guard? Why didn't someone say to me, this could happen? Why did I not know what performance anxiety was until the therapist told me, like months into my issues? And when I realized that it was a conversation that needed to be had and people weren't educated about it, especially athletes, I wanted to share what happened to me. And I did that in hopes that someone who felt like me wouldn't go a year hiding it like I did. And they might Google depressed athlete or why am I afraid to play the same way I did, but this time they would find a result. And that's sort of why I would have felt inclined to deliver the talk. And in terms of my vulnerability, like you just mentioned, I am just, I don't know, I'm a really straightforward, honest person. I've never been the type to fake it or lie. And I'm very outgoing. So even if I'm struggling real bad, I'm able to talk about those things. And it wasn't easy. I had people, advise me it wasn't the best to share this information about what I went through. But I felt like it was the right thing to do.
Wow. I mean, I'm going to leave a link to that TED Talk because everybody should watch that. Even if you're not dealing with those issues, it's really good to be aware of, because I think I remember you said 1 in 4 people suffer with a mental health disorder. Is that right?
Yeah, that is true. 25% of people will experience a mental health issue, but I'll add to that by saying 100% of us will experience a challenging, heartbreaking, traumatic situation in our lives. 100% of
Right.
us. Everyone is going to experience something painful, and that's mental health. So this is something that affects everyone.
I was wondering if you could just expand a little bit more on the grind, because that's what all athletes go through, whether you're having a mental health issue or not. We all go through the grind. And you mentioned about something about the culture of athletics in college sports, about how it's so much of a grind. And then there was this one image in my head where you actually showed your schedule,
Mhm.
you know, and I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about that grind and what that did to you. And I think you said you were on the verge of crying sometimes, and just trying to, like, you're just overwhelmed with all of it, right? And so, like, what did you learn from that? And looking back from that, looking back on that, what advice would you give to athletes who might be going through that now?
This is a great topic to discuss, especially for the youth athletes, like you mentioned, because the culture of athletics is intense. And it
Right.
does say, if you work the hardest, you will get what you want. If you outwork him, if you go longer than her, you're going to be the person, you're going to win.
Right.
And that theme, that narrative caused me so much pressure to feel like I was doing more than others, to feel like I needed to do more than others, to feel like I had to lift more, I had to go harder, I had to go longer, I had to get the best stats. And so that grind, which is just kind of glamorized as this, like, do one more rep, like, come early, like, go, don't take a day off, like, is what caused me to burn out and become completely exhausted. And in the TED Talk, I just discussed this fine line between pushing through a workout and pushing yourself, and then pushing through your life. And I felt like I had really crossed that line. And it's a very fine line that still, I think, is not easily identifiable by most people. And there's not an easily identifiable answer to say this is the line and this isn't. Um,
Right.
Personally, like, I had to learn based on myself when I was crossing that line or when I was grinding, because I love to work hard. I do love to go longer than my person I'm competing with. I do love to stay extra. I love those things.
Yeah, me
But
too.
I had to learn when it was helping me and then when it was hurting me. And I can give you an example. Like, my
Yeah.
freshman year, I would stay as long as the other libero for the sole purpose of telling myself I stayed as long as her. Not to
Mm.
make myself better, not to whatever, just because, oh, if you're here, I'm staying. That was the mentality, and that drove me crazy. And then my senior year, junior year, I was a libero, and there was a DS who I could tell was doing the same thing with me. And I would see her want to stay and do more. And I was like, you know what? I feel really good about my practice. I feel like I did a good job today, and it will serve me best to go home, shower, and have dinner with my roommate. It's not going to serve me to stay an extra 45 minutes just because I'm threatened by you. And I had to identify that difference. And so I
Hmm.
grinded in practice. And some days I was like, yeah, I got to stay longer. Other days I was like, no, I feel really content with the 3 hours I put in during our block.
Yeah, I mean, this whole topic is interesting. So I want to stay on it for just a little bit more, because I know a lot of athletes are going through this, and they're just afraid to talk about it or even think about it. You mentioned that when you were going through this, you were actually afraid to play and make a mistake.
Mhm.
Talk about that for a second, because I've been there, especially, I played at UCLA, and I, no one wants to make a mistake, but having all this compound makes that fear, like, makes you tight, right? You play tight, and you're prone to mistakes. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, the anxiety is just like crippling. I mean,
Right.
when the first thing when you say that comes to my head is my freshman year when we played Oklahoma at Oklahoma. It was the very first time I felt myself in a locker room crying before the
Mm.
game, not sure why I was. And like, almost just like I was crying, but I was smiling, like, why am I doing this? Like, why? I don't want to play volleyball. Like, I've never not wanted to play volleyball. Like, I love volleyball girl. And it was really uncomfortable for me. And then at the same time, like, I had a national player of the year on my team in our starting lineup. And she is an adult woman. I am this young 18-year-old, and we are on the same team. And this girl's hungry. She wants to win. It's Samantha Bricio. She's incredible. I'm so grateful I got to play with her. But I saw that as that young girl I didn't see that as this awesome opportunity to learn and whatever. I saw it as, oh, I have to play well because Sam is so good and I can't make a mistake. And I just felt like there were all these upperclassmen, USC players who I'd watched on TV and who had been to Final Fours. And when I made that stupid mistake, I just felt, oh, I'm the freshman walk on and like no one thinks I'm good enough. And that narrative grew in my head and it made me so uncomfortable on the court and so afraid to play because I didn't want to let anyone down, let alone these amazing, iconic girls that were on my team who didn't make mistakes.
Right. And well, how'd you deal with that? I mean, what were some tools that you used back then to deal with that?
You know, like freshman year, it was like sink or swim. Like I just had to figure it out without having the proper tools. I mean, the way I dealt with it was by like playing myself a motivational video before the game that was just like one of those crazy, like, you gotta fight through pain. You gotta, unless you puke, faint, or die, keep going. Like I would listen to those YouTube motivational videos to tell myself, like, forget how you're feeling and go do it. And, you know, some games it worked. I'm also someone who I when it comes down to winning, I consider myself clutch. I'm not always clutch. I've made very stupid, ditzy mistakes on the court. But if you put me in a game and you say, like, we need to win this, I'm naturally a person who can go into that fight mode instead of the flight mode. And so it was weird because my anxiety would be worse when we played like a lower ranked team because it was so easy that I was only thinking about myself. But then like when we played Kansas in the Elite Eight in a fifth set, I was the one who was like, mine, ball, because I just wanted to win. So,
Right.
so my freshman year, it was just this weird, like, not healthy coping mechanisms. Like one coping mechanism was food. If I was really stressed before a game, I would just eat a ton of food. And that caused me eating issues. And so it was just not healthy the way I coped. And I like I said, it was sink or swim and I was barely treading water. And then when I started going to therapy and I started learning about the growth mindset and what anxiety is and mindfulness, I was then able to actually properly control those emotions.
Okay. So because it's so relative to right now, talk a little bit about how you used social media back then. Because in that TED Talk, you talk about how social media was a tool for you, but maybe it wasn't a tool in the most healthy way.
Yeah, not at all. It was something that I used to convince me I was happy, to convince others I was happy. So like I'm explaining this freshman year where I'm crippled with anxiety, I'm overeating, I'm talking so negatively to myself, and I'm living in like fear of making a mistake at practice. I would then turn to social media and edit a picture of myself to look skinny or post a picture of myself smiling in my uniform because, so, hey, I'm the girl that came to USC and I want everyone in my hometown to think I'm loving it. And social media was just this mask of what was really going on. And, you know, that even made me feel more of an imposter because I would get all these likes and comments, you know, your body looks so good. And I would think, well, I literally photoshopped the whole thing. Or you look so happy, you're killing it. The team is 22-0. And meanwhile, here I am like crying before the games and that's not the picture I'm posting. So it was just this way to mask what was going on.
So in that TED Talk, you also talked about how it almost got to a point where it was maybe a little bit of a self-harm kind of thing. And it didn't get to that point, but you know, there might be some youth athletes that might be going through the exact same thing. And I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about that moment and what helped you get through that. You mentioned therapy, but you know, if someone's not able to access therapy, what are some things that could help them?
Yeah. And I just want to say, like, you're doing a great job. Like, these are questions that people
Thank
don't
you.
ask me. And I really appreciate it because, like, no one's asked me this question. And, like, I'm like getting emotional just because, like, it is something that, like, it's not something I'm proud of. It's something that is dark, especially where I am now in my life to think, yeah, I had suicidal thoughts. I had suicidal ideations because I felt so claustrophobic in my life that it was not so much like wanting to die as it was just death, or like being in a hospital bed would be a break. And it was the only like viable break I kind of could picture, because I couldn't call in and say I don't want to go to practice. I couldn't say I have a test. There's no excuse playing Division I volleyball for a school that's trying to win a national championship like USC. I mean, you do what you need to do to show up and perform. And I just felt sometimes like I couldn't do it. And when I started having those thoughts of like escaping my life, fortunately I was able to notice, wow, Victoria, like we've never been a person who's understood why suicide is the answer, why people hurt themselves. Like I've never been able to comprehend it. And in that low point of my life, I truly was like, I fully understand why someone would take their life. And when I got to that point, I was like, oh my God, like something's not good with me. And I'm really grateful that at that time I was seeing a therapist and I could talk about these things with that therapist. So the timing of that, I'm lucky to be able to talk through those problems.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing, Vic, you inspire me because of how you took that emotion and that low point almost, and that real feeling, and you just transformed that. You said, you know what, this is real. Not only am I going to be the best volleyball player I can be at this time in my life, I'm going to, not only that, I'm going to do a TED talk. I'm going to express my vulnerability on social media. I'm going to make a thing out of this to help others, and that's really why I have you here today, because that's awesome. It's one thing to have things that happen. We all have things, but it's another thing to transform that thing and to make it actually something that can help others, and that's really what this project is about. So I really appreciate how you did that, and how you're continuing to do that on a day-to-day basis. And again, going back to that vulnerability, I mean, I didn't tell you this before, but I have a word that I wrote down for everyone that comes on my podcast. And after I learn about my guest, I think of a word, and my word for you is brave. And even to see the emotion on your face now, like talking about that, like that takes a lot of bravery, and I really appreciate that from you.
Thank you. That really means a lot to me. And, like, as much as it's not something like that makes me happy to talk about, I think talking about it reminds me like why I'm doing what I do now. And it's easy to fall into this trap of building a brand and being an advocate for mental health. And like I go and I give these keynotes, and there's this element of, well, I better impress the athletic director. They better think this was useful. They flew me out here. Like, it's easy to lose sight of what the mission is. And it's as simple as like, I went through some really hard shit. I'm just here to tell you about it so that you could feel better in your situation and you could not feel alone. And then unfortunately it gets that true ripe meaning in the center just kind of can get overshadowed by like, social media and people talking about, oh, that's so great, you're an advocate for mental health. And like, I get so disconnected from why I'm even doing this. I appreciate talking about it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really healthy for me to talk about it too. So I think it's healthy for everyone to talk about, to listen to other people talk about, and to just start those conversations, start those maybe a little bit uncomfortable conversations, because it can turn into like amazing things. It can turn into these speaking engagements. It can turn into books. It can turn into podcasts,
Right.
and you can help others get through those moments.
But yeah, exactly. But then it's important to remember, why you're doing those things.
For
So
sure.
this was a good reminder, especially I have a really cool event coming tonight. So thank you for
Yeah.
grounding me.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, let's kind of move that over to the emotional side of this, because that's where I want to take this next. You know, I watched another video of your senior speech, and again, I'm gonna link that below here, so everyone can watch that, because it was a really cool speech, and you were looking back on your career at USC, and you expressed this emotion. This emotion just came out of you, and it was so cool. And I was just wondering if you could just maybe just talk a little bit about what it felt like to express that emotion, and yeah, and just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, my senior speech was something I legitimately look forward to from my first day of freshman year on campus. And like, I know that's terrible to be like, I was already thinking about the future, but that's who I am. Like, I'm already thinking about my wedding. I'm already thinking about my kids' names. Like, so you better bet I was thinking about my senior speech, like as a freshman. And I always thought about like what I would say. And, that was something that like completing 4 years of being a student athlete was something that would also keep me going. Like, I remember getting water in the middle of practice and really just going to the bathroom to cry for 2 seconds in between serve receive drills, and just be like, I will write about this in my senior speech. Like, and it just like, I reminded myself that these hard things are building me to finish this job that I know I can do.
Hmm.
And, one of the things that was a heartbreaker for me was not ever getting a scholarship. And like you mentioned, yes, I started for 4 years, and I played in, I think, every single game of the 4 years I was an athlete on the team. And so to not walk away with a scholarship, people look at that and don't understand how it makes sense. But, politically and with the contracts and with everything, it just didn't happen for me. And at first that was a really big bummer. I was heartbroken. I wanted to earn that scholarship. I wanted to award my parents like with earning that for all the support they'd shown me in putting me through sports as a kid. And, I really had to flip that around. And I say this in my talk and say, like, every single day of the past 4 years was a choice. Like, I didn't show up because my tuition was being paid. I didn't show up because like I had to. I showed up because I wanted to, and I could have left any day. And so that was sort of my power. And I was really proud to be able to say that.
I love it. I love that. Again, I love the bravery and the vulnerability that you show in that speech. And I want to take this a step further, and let's go back to, the whole idea of the emotional part of an inspired practice. So let's bring it back to that. What are the emotions, and what are the differences and similarities of emotion from both an inspired practice and an inspired game?
Um, I think it's just feeling like the best version of yourself is, I think, what I think about when you say all these things. And, I'm still learning what makes me the best version of myself. And there's certain people I can think of who I am always the best version of myself around. And then there's other people who I love more than anything, but I'm not my best self around them. And
Hmm.
in terms of like an inspired practice, an inspired game, I think it's just regardless of environment, culture, teammates, coach, how can you be the best version of yourself in a moment? How can you view the obstacles as opportunities? And how can you create a moment that you're proud of,
Hmm.
when it's not totally what you wanted?
I love that, Vic, because that's what sports are. They're moments. They're just moments. You win points, you lose points, you win games, you lose games, but they're all moments. So I love
Mhm.
how you said that. How can you create a moment for yourself? That's beautiful. Um, Let me ask you this: how does the inspired feeling, staying with that emotional part of this, how does the inspired feeling transcend one's sport or discipline and carry over to their personal or daily life?
Sorry, we asked that one more time.
Yeah, for sure. How does the inspired feeling transcend one's sport and carry over to their personal life?
Yeah, this is a great question because I didn't know the answer to this a few weeks ago.
Okay.
I was actually working out with my boyfriend, who is just an all around incredible guy. And he just works out super hard. And this
What's
is a
his
guy
name?
who, Max Brown, and this
Max
is a
Brown, shout out.
guy, yeah, and this is a guy who was quote unquote destined to play in the NFL and had a career ending injury and it didn't work out for him. And yet he's still now working a normal job, goes out and works his ass off every single day, like in a workout. And I go and I work out, and I just remember being in the middle of sprints with him, and I didn't know what to call on because I usually call on like beating out the girl or getting the spot or winning the championship. And that's my like keep running the sprints. And I'm like, what do I call on? Because I don't have a team, I don't have a game. And I asked him, and he was just like, how you do this workout transfers to how you walk into the room tomorrow or how you continue on the rest of your day. And this is just you putting money in your personal integrity bank of I finish things and I work my hardest. And I loved that because it is true. Like, the day you work out and you work out really hard, and it's not for a championship, it's not for a sport, it's just because you can, translates. And that's the confidence that you call on when you show up with your project and people don't think you're smart enough or good enough. And you're like, yeah, I work my ass off. Like, I know I do. And you call on that tough workout, which is the confidence in this moment. And so I think that's how it translates to life.
It reminds me of that quote, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Just another question on emotion. Just let's talk about emotional management for a second. I don't have this written down, but it's just coming to me. For the youth athlete that is having that hard time emotionally managing everything, whether it's the schedule, it's the practices, the games, the overwhelm. What are some tools and tips that you can give to emotionally manage everything?
Well, I feel like for me, the biggest help has been therapy and talking to someone about like what triggers me and what my like obsess with achieving is rooted in from my childhood and what my motives are because of my fears. And I really had to dive into all of that to be able to, be calm in those moments. But I do know that not everyone can see a therapist. And so I would love to also give an answer that is helpful to anyone. But so in that case, I would just say like noticing the trigger is huge for me. Like, what is triggering you? Is it that this coach always yells at you and you're afraid to play for this coach? Is the trigger the soccer field? Because every time you play on the soccer field, you think just like a trigger for me was literally the Galen Center. Like a trigger was just walking in the building because I thought about negative things.
Mm.
So what's the trigger? And then once you find that trigger out, like how can we become one with that trigger and kind of eliminate that animosity between you and that thing? And so for me, it was going to the gym, sitting in a chair, closing my eyes and smelling the gym and just reminding myself good things can happen in this gym. Opportunity can happen in this gym. Dreams can come true in this gym, and rewiring that for me. And then another thing too, I'd say is reminding myself that I'm small. And what I mean by that is our anxiety stems from this like me, 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 me. Am I going to play well? Am I going to do well? Are they going to think this is me? Me, me, me. And it's not about me, Victoria. It is not about you. It is about everyone else in the world. It is about like coronavirus. It is about the pandemic. It is about the healthcare. Like it is not about me. And so that has really helped me remember that no one's showing up thinking, what is Victoria Garrick gonna blah, blah, blah. They're not. And so those two things have really helped me. It's like take that spotlight off yourself, put it on someone else and help them. And I guarantee you will do your job better when you're doing it for someone else, not so that you can look good.
Wow. I absolutely love that. You mentioned one word that I just want to touch on for a second. You said rewiring,
Mm-hmm.
and like for me, I kind of get what that means. For me, that means transforming. But like, so I'm well aware of this, the power of the subconscious. The power of the subconscious kind of runs us on a day-to-day basis, on a moment basis. So when you say rewiring, is that what you mean? You're rewiring the anxiety feeling into an opportunity feeling?
I think it just means creating a new equation. And my old equation was me plus Jim equals bad things and anxiousness. And it's going back and saying, no, okay, me plus Jim can also equal growth, opportunity, memories, pictures with my parents after the game, living my dream, and realizing that there's a lot of other answers to me plus Jim than just the negatives. And that's the
Cool.
rewiring.
I love that. I love that. We all need to practice that, including me. That's awesome. Let's talk about flow. Can you identify when you are in the game, in the flow, in the zone, or locked in?
Yes, I know when I'm in flow state, it was that fun, carefree, not thinking attitude, and I'm just being, and I'm not thinking. And like I said, those were scarce experiences as a college athlete for me, but when they came, it was the most fun I had playing.
So I'm curious. I've been asking everybody this. Is it possible to practice that flow state?
I think it's possible to do the things necessary to possibly lead to flow state. I don't think you can practice flow state. And like, I guess the example I'll give is one time in therapy, we did this thing where you like hook up to this machine. And the first time we did it, I had no idea what it was. She was like, just sit here and just sit and think. or just sit and try to be mindful. And when I was done, I opened my eyes, took out the sensors, and I saw on the computer a screen that had like a beautiful fountain and a rainbow and a sky and butterflies. And she basically said, when you are in a flow state or when you are not thinking, things will turn color in this picture. And so, cool. The next time I went to therapy and we did it, all I was thinking was, oh, I hope I'm getting the rainbow. Oh, I wonder how many colors are there. Oh, I wonder. And I got like barely anything to turn into color because I was trying to be in flow state.
Right.
So I really don't think you could practice being in the flow state. But I think you can definitely practice the tools and the repetitive habits that can lead to flow state.
Okay. And so let's say you find yourself in flow state in practice. Is it possible to bank that feeling so you can try to remember that for the game?
For sure. I think in that moment, ask yourself, okay, what is it that's making me feel like I'm grooving?
Right.
What does it feel like to be grooving? Am I talking with people? Am I connecting with them? Am I really present? And just notice, like, what are all the components of your flow state? Because then I think you can be in a moment and be like, you know, one of the two biggest things that happened for me in flow state was I was really connected with my teammates and I had amazing energy. So let's just try to do those two things to hopefully get back to that state. So I think that would
Right.
be the way to go about it.
I think that's a really good practice too. And not just for sports, but even for speaking, right? I mean, when you take the stage, like that's a performance, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes you have to remember, the tools that have helped you as an athlete, right?
Yeah, and that's something I've really been figuring out. No one teaches you how to be a public speaker. I mean, at least for me, I probably should get a coach or a class or something, but I'm big on like keeping things real and genuine. So I would
Right.
hate to be, I don't know, too scripted. But for me, like in those moments, and this relates to everything, man. Like
Right.
I'm just going to be me and speak my truth. And that's how I approach a public speaking event to hundreds of people. The same way when you show up to a game, you got to say to yourself, I'm just going to play my game and trust that I have this. I'm not going to think about the technique when I'm moving my foot. I'm in the game now. I did my hours. I'm trusting I have it in me. And I think that's the best way to perform in a moment is trust yourself.
Trust yourself and bank on the preparation that you
Yeah. And
did for
trust in
yourself.
all the work you've put in.
Love it. Love it. All right, let's talk about sources, Vic. Where do you get inspiration from?
Um, I get inspiration from, I think, other people who demonstrate strength and kindness and a relentless work ethic. That inspires me. Um, I'm also inspired by things I'm passionate about. Um, if it's something that I really want to do, like I'm working on a passion project right now that has to do with food and body image, and like I'm excited to do that. Like that inspires me to think about the way it could help people. So for me, I think it's, role models and then also passion.
Love that. Are you inspired by your fans, like all the people that just like reach out to you and say, "Oh my God, you inspire me"? Does that inspire you back?
It definitely does. I've been trying to do this new thing where I like go live with my fans and I'm able to talk to them and connect with them. Because it's great to see a face and a smile and hear their voice and just remind myself this is a human being who supports what I'm doing, as opposed to this is a like and a comment from a username.
Right.
So I really prefer to like humanize anyone that supports me. And I love meeting people after my talks, and I've had a few fun moments where like I was at the boardwalk in Santa Monica and like someone asked for a picture with me and I was like, I love you. I never thought I'd get asked for a picture at the boardwalk.
That's cool. That's really cool. Awesome, Vic. Well, hey, that's the main interview questions. We'll move to the lightning round. So these are a little bit quicker answers. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. How do you define success, and what does being successful mean to you?
I would define success as, oh, this is such a tough one. And I just had a great conversation with someone about this because sometimes we only think success is this incredibly amazing accomplishment as opposed to why can't hanging out with your best friend be success? Um, I guess for Me, success is feeling like you have done the work to reap the benefits. And those benefits could be small. It could be, I got in my car, I got my shit together so I could come see my best friend, and now we're watching a movie and I'm reaping the benefits. Or it could be, I put in my 4 years of volleyball at USC and now I feel really good about what I can do when I put my mind to something. So to me, it is feeling like you've put the work in to reap the benefit.
Love it. How do you consider the idea of failure?
I love failure. I feel like it's important to know that anyone above us who's doing better than us has most likely failed more than us. So it's important to fail for sure.
Agree. What are the most successful habits that you do on a consistent basis?
I would say that something that helps me be successful is truly prioritizing what is best for me on any given day. And, this past Monday, I had a million things to do. I had so much to do on this amazing work Monday that I had this plan. And then I woke up Monday with a lot of anxiety. And I think it was because of all the stuff I was doing this week. And I said, you know what? Then I'm not going to do it today. I'm taking my day off. This is my mental health day, and I'm going to do something else that I want to do. And that was watch a comedy show, FaceTime some friends, and not do work. And other days, I wake up and I start working from the early morning up until 11:30 at night with videos and podcasts and getting ahead. So to me, it ebbs and flows. And I think what makes me successful on a daily practice is honoring what I have that day.
Honoring your truth. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. Um, for you, what is the most important lesson that has helped shape who you are today?
The most important lesson that has shaped me was something that my mom just always kind of instilled in me indirectly. I mean, I love my mom. She's definitely not that wise old woman that like drops these one liners. It was more just, she would always say, like, make it happen. And to me, that meant if you want something, you have to go get it. No one is giving it to you. You can't wait around. Like, good things come to those who work really hard. And that is sort of, I think, how I've been able to develop into the woman I am and I'm still becoming, because I truly make things happen if that's what I want. And I work really hard for those things. And sometimes I don't get those things, but I'm at least working for them. So for me, just the life lesson of if you want something, work really hard to set yourself up in the best possible opportunity to have that thing come true for you.
Love it. Can you share the biggest challenge you've been through on your journey?
I think, the biggest challenge I've been through was my battle with anxiety and depression. That was for
Right.
sure the biggest struggle I've ever experienced in my life. But I don't regret it at all. I mean, it's shaped me.
Right. Right. How important is the idea of having impact to you?
It's definitely valuable to be someone that makes an impact in a positive way to those around you. And I think that that's a good thing that everyone should value, especially young athletes, is how do you impact your team? When you're on the bench, how do you make a difference? How do you make an impact? When things aren't going the way you want, you're making an impact, whether you want to or not. Is it negative? Is it neutral? Or is it positive? And for me, I think it's just, if you can't be positive, at least make a neutral impact. Don't take from people. So I think if you can't make that positive impact, be self-aware that you're making an impact regardless, because everyone does in all situations. So let's be cautious of that and make an impact that's going to put everyone else around you in a better space.
I really like that. It also makes me think of making impact to your future self,
Hmm.
which is cool too. I did skip one. I want to go back to it. What do you think the biggest challenge is for other people that you see?
The biggest challenge I see for other people is not being able to fully be who they want to be and be their
Mm,
truth. And I
Yeah.
get all the time young girls asking me, how do you just post on Instagram and not care? How do you just blah, blah, blah and don't care? What about people think? But I don't like the way I look. And so the biggest challenge I see is just this misconception that we have to look a certain way or have people approve us or validate us to be who we want to be and be our truth. And I really just would love to see everyone be able to be who they want to be without feeling like it has to be for others.
Amen. I love that. All right, just a few more here, Vic. What brings you joy? What part of your work brings you the most joy?
I am brought the most joy when I get to talk to someone and hug them and hear about their story. That is definitely the thing that brings me the most joy. If I ever get anxious about public speaking, or I don't want to get on my seventh plane of the first 10 days of the month, I'm just like, you're going to get some hugs and connect with people. And that brings me the most joy.
Cool. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received and why? And I know you just mentioned that advice, make it happen, from your mom. Anything else come to mind? Any other coaches or people?
That's definitely, I think, the best life advice that's kind of shaped me in all aspects. But in terms of sports advice, I always go to this one moment. I was very lucky to have Nicole Davis, who's a two-time Olympian libero, be my mentor because she was a USC player. And it was the first game I was officially starting as libero for USC my sophomore year against UCLA. And it was a big game, conference starter. And I just texted her, I think, saying like, any words of advice before this game? And she said, you're going to make mistakes tonight. And I read the text like, oh my God, like, why would she say this? Like, that makes me nervous. I'm not going to make mistakes. I'm going to play great. And then she followed it up with, and when they come, because you're human and they will, and no one is perfect, you'll be able to handle them. And in that moment, I just was like, dang, you're right. No one is ever perfect. The idea that I'm going to go out there and play a flawless game doesn't exist. The idea that Sam Bricio is going to go play a flawless game maybe exists more than me, but it doesn't really exist because someone's not going to hit the shot they want. They might not get the kill when they need to get the kill. They might miss a serve long. You know, I might pass a one. Like, I'm going to make a mistake. And so I think just being told that mistakes are going to come really helped me in the moments that they did come. Because I was like, oh, there's my mistake. You know, cool, I'm a human, as opposed to, oh, I made a mistake and I needed to be perfect. So that was one of the best sports advice I've ever gotten.
That's awesome. It really makes me think of something Sue Enquist told me one time. Shout out Sue. She said, you have to have a failure response system. Failure is going to come, but it's the response system that's important.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, that's a good one. Vic, what is your ultimate why?
I feel like I'm having a conversation with God right before I go to heaven. What is my why? I'm like, is he going to open the gates for me? What is my why?
And before you answer, it's maybe the best question I could ask. And I really encourage everyone to think about that, including me. I do it too, but it's a really powerful question. What is your ultimate why?
I think my ultimate why is to feel joy. I just think that's why I live. That's why I do things. That's why I go to events. That's why I see friends. That's why I do everything in my life, is to experience joy. And, you know, that emotion of pure joy is something that is one of the best feeling I think in the world. And I think that's why I live every day. And I want to be on this earth, is because I love the feeling of joy and um, the people I love. And, you know, that to me just seems like my why.
That's awesome. I love it. Looking back on your journey, is there anything you wish you could change and why?
Looking back on my journey, I want to say no. You know, I have no regrets because every piece has connected to the dots to this moment, and I wouldn't change anything. However, I do wish I could go back and maybe just shake myself on the shoulders and be like, just have fun, girl. Like, you're libero for USC. Like, let's have a good time tonight, man. Like, it's not about all of these other things I was stressing about in the moment. And you know what? I did have someone shake my shoulders and say that. Nicole said that to me. And then she also said, but I know it means nothing because someone told me that when I was in your shoes and I still couldn't see it. But then once you graduate and you look back, you see it. It's like, just have fun. You're a kid and you're playing volleyball for your dream school. So, you know, if I could go back, I would just remind myself to have more fun.
I love that. That's awesome. Looking at these pyramids, you know, John Wooden's pyramid of success and this pyramid of inspired living, is there anything that stands out to you? I don't know if you have them in front of you, but
I don't. Yeah, can I see this?
I don't know if the light will work. But at the top of this is John Wooden's, and it's competitive greatness at the top. But this really worked for him, for his teams and all his team success.
Wow, his definition of success is way better than mine, but mine definitely relates to his. I think I'm not too far off the mark. I definitely love John Wooden and everything he has to say. You know, I studied him in school in a sports journalism class, and all of his teachings are great. And, you know, one of my favorite things is failing to prepare is preparing to fail.
Mm.
And I love that quote. I think it just helps explain that if you want anything, you're going to have to put the work in, you're going to have to prepare for it. And you can't just sit back and expect it, because then, like he said, it's preparing to not get what you want.
Right.
So that's really one of the things I love about his teachings.
Cool. And so, you know, having gone to UCLA, I saw that pyramid, you know, every day, all the time. And it inspired me to make my own pyramid of inspired living, because I think that's my peak. That's what I want to get to on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis. Would you, first of all, agree with that? And second of all, would you also suggest others to make their blueprint, their pyramid, their thing?
Let me pull up your pyramid
Yeah,
just so I
sure.
can
And I have it here
properly
too, if you want.
reference.
I know the light is kind of tough, but
It's okay. I think I'm going to get it on my email real quick.
Okay.
Aaron. Okay. Got it. I think it's awesome that you were inspired by John Wooden's pyramid and made your own pyramid. And I feel like anyone who needs to fully grasp how they want to accomplish something or who they want to be in life does need to take that time. And it's time, right? To sit down and figure out who you are at your core and how you want to get there and what those steps are. So I love that you did that for yourself. It's definitely inspiring to me. And, you know, I would say one of the things that jumps out at me here is the intent of purpose. I am someone that my intentions are my everything. Like that is the thing that I will go to the grave with, is I have the best intentions, and I'm never trying to throw someone under the rug. I'm never trying to manipulate, scheme, hurt someone. And so I think having pure intentions is so important. And if I make mistakes, of course I unintentionally hurt people, or I unintentionally upset someone. And I think that's where the honest, very pure side of me is like, okay, how did I do that? And how can I learn next time not to do that? Because I only am thinking of the good intent. So that's something I really love, is that word intention.
I love that. I love that. Vic, you're awesome. You're amazing. You're inspiring. Thank you so much for taking the time and just delving into all this stuff. And I really, really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. I really did enjoy this.
Cool.
These are great questions, and I'm really glad that we did this. So thanks for even thinking of me, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. And just one more time, your podcast is Realpod, and you can get more information at victoriagarrick.com or on your Instagram at victoriagarrick.
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Vic, and we'll talk soon, okay?
Appreciate it.
Okay, no problem. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining me on Within the Game podcast. Visit withinthegame.com for show notes and links on everything we talked about today. You can also subscribe to the mailing list, which will give you exclusive content from each guest, as well as more resources to help you stay inspired in and out of your game. Follow us on Instagram at Within the Game Podcast.